Don't worry about that, sugar. If something bothers me, I would say I don't want to talk about that. I'm not that fragile.
This is
Death, sex, and money.
Death is just a part of life.
It's the show from WNYC about the things we think about a lot
Do you like sex?
and need to talk about more.
There's more to life than a little money,
I'm Anna Sale.
Who in the world would come up with a title like that?
It's all the essential stuff, right?
Yeah. If you reverse them, it's a story of a lot of people's lives. That's the story of rock and roll right there.
This guy knows something about that.
My name is Bill Withers.
And you know his songs. Ain't No Sunshine, Lean on Me, Lovely Day, Just the Two of Us, Use Me. Bill Withers hasn't released a new studio album in almost 30 years, but he's totally okay with that.
When you live this long, living is sort of like a habit. Like a lot of people have said, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. I should be doing yoga and, riding the exercise bike, but I go in and look at the treadmill every morning, and then I turn on the TV.
He's in his mid-70s now. He was a grown man in his early 30s already when his first album came out. He worked with producer Booker T. Jones on it, and it won him a Grammy, and he knew he'd never have to worry about money again. But Bill Withers grew up poor in West Virginia. He was the last of 6 kids.
6 that lived to be adults. The infant mortality rate was high, so I think my mother had about 13 kids, but 6 of us lived to be adults.
Slab Fork is the name of the town where he grew up, at least until he was 3 years old. That's when his parents split up, and his mom moved to a little city nearby called Beckley.
My father was very faithful. He picked us up every Friday, so we lived weekends in Slab Fork and the week in Beckley. And then I went back and lived with my father for 1 year. The last year of his life, I lived with him. He needed some help.
So were you taking care of him when he was ailing?
Well, we were taking care of each other, 11 and 12, I was with him, At that age, when you're with an adult, you're kind of taking care of each other,
What was your father like? What kind of man was he?
Well, he was a very stable guy. He was the treasurer for everything. He was the treasurer for the union, the United Mine Workers Union over there. And he was the treasurer for the church. And that kind of,
That says a lot.
Yeah.
You describe him as a man of stability and consistency. What was it like to lose him when you were just becoming a man?
Well, it wasn't like he dropped dead from a heart attack. He was sick for a while, so there's a reality to life that you can see certain things coming, and so you prepare. You miss somebody that dies, but I was prepared to go on with life. Or maybe that's just my personality,
A realist. I mean, maybe you got that from your father.
Probably so, yeah.
Wanna wish you freedom to do all the things you love. Wanna wish you blessings and kindness from above. Wanna wish you sunlight through the clouds.
Do you remember your childhood in Slab Fork and then in Beckley? Do you remember it as a happy time?
I remember it as trying to get through it time, I stuttered until I was about 30. So mostly I remember thinking about getting out. I wasn't going to go in those coal mines, Since I stuttered, people kind of bother you when you stuttered. One of the big influences on me was a little guy named Virgil that owned a newsstand. Virgil was probably less than 5 feet tall. He walked on crutches and looked like he had a volleyball in the back of his shirt. And I was shining shoes over there, and I would go buy comic books One day I went to buy a comic book, and I wanted one that was behind the counter, so I had to ask for it. So when Virgil noticed that I stuttered, rather than laughing like everybody else did, he said, "I think you can get some help for that." As fate would have it, that little man who couldn't walk without crutches became my male figure, because that was very macho to me, you know. A bunch of guys run around flexing their muscles, drinking moonshine, and fighting each other on the weekends. That wasn't masculine to me. That was just dumb. Virgil he let me know that maybe something could be done about it, that I didn't have to stutter for the rest of my life. He got me one session with a therapist, and we couldn't afford to go back. But it put the seed in my mind.
That stutter, Bill Withers struggled with it for a long time. But songwriting always came easy to him.
Something crosses your mind, and then you try to say it and make it rhyme.
Billy, don't you run so fast. Might fall on a piece of glass.
It's wordplay, you know?
Grandma's hand, soothe the local unwed mother. Grandma's hand used to ache sometimes and swell. Grandma's hand used to lift her face and tell her, she'd say, "Baby, Grandma, understand that you really love that man. Put yourself in Jesus' hands, Grandma's hands."
But before he could make any music, Bill Withers had to get out of the mountains. So he looked to the military. He joined the Navy and was a mechanic. But then that ended.
I was terrified when I got out of the Navy like that, because I didn't know how things were going to work out. But then mostly I knew I had to make a living, so I would work I worked at Ford Motor Company. I worked at IBM, whatever.
Tell me about that time. I mean, you were out of the Navy. You're working and living in California. You're trying to break into the music business, and it's not just a year. It's not just 2 years. It's year 3, year 4, year 5.
Yeah.
When you think of yourself when you were that age, I mean, you're in your early 30s, were you confident, or were you still sort of looking for some signs from the world that you were going to be okay?
Well, I'm not into false humility. So certain things you don't try if you don't think you can do it. So obviously I thought I could do it, because I went to a great effort to do it. I mean, it's not, I don't think you can get into something like sports or the music business by accident. You have to put yourself on the line. And to put yourself on the line, you have to at least think you can do it, If I was going to write anything longer than a song, I would write about fear. People get stuck in situations and they want to do something else, but they're afraid. Courage is not being afraid. It's what do you do in spite of being afraid? Fear disguises itself as anger and stuff, Ego will make you call fear something other than what it is. I mean, it's not very macho to say I'm scared.
Turns out, Bill Withers has been thinking about what's macho and what makes a man for a long time. A couple of years ago, he went to the USC football locker room to give them a pep talk. He said, you don't have to give up any of your machismo if you lean on each other. And then the room full of big, thick football players all stood up and sang Lean on Me with him. Try and watch it and not smile. It's on our website at deathsexmoney.org. And I know, I hate the Trojans too. I'm Anna Sale, and this is Death, Sex, and Money from WNYC. Bill Withers was 5 years out of the Navy and had worked a string of manufacturing jobs. That's when he decided that breaking into the music business was one of those things he was going to have to do on his own.
waiting for some guy with a cigar to come and discover you is not going to happen. You have to go discover them. So I saved my money and started recording myself and leaving, just leaving tapes around.
And then one day you got a phone call.
Well, it's not like I got a phone call from some major thing. It was some guy I'd never heard of from a record company I'd never heard of. So we went in and did half the record and got kicked out of the studio because the bills weren't paid. So I had to wait another 6 months to do the other half. Somehow or another, this guy was able to get Booker T to work with me. It was kind of a fly-by-night. One time we were recording and Stephen Stills was walking down the hallway and Booker was friends with him, so he said, "Hey, Stephen, would you come here and play a little bit for us?" So it was kind of like that,
What was that like for you?
You got to figure, I wasn't 18 years old. I was in my 30s, so I was beyond being starstruck. I was just trying to get something done, I remember when I was recording my first song I was working on, Graham Nash came in and sat down in front of me. And in those days, Graham had a little taste here and there. So he was pretty much drunk. But he was very nice to me. He kept saying, "You don't know how good you are." So it was kind of an experience like that. It was, I had been in this military-industrial complex all my life. I'm trying to relate to all these crazy musicians, Booker was very stable. That helped me a lot.
If you read the album cover by now, you know that my name is what my name is. When I came in here to try and do this, something I've never done before, Mr. Jones, Booker T, said to me, "Don't worry about it. Just do what you do and do it good."
So your first album comes out. It's called Just As I Am. At that point, you're laid off from your job that you've had. And there's a day when you get a call back to work, and you got another phone call the same day?
Yeah, I got called back to my job, and Johnny Carson's people called to see if I would come on the Johnny Carson show. So...
And was there a moment of hesitation, or did you know you were going for Johnny and leaving your old life behind?
Well, I thought about it because everybody that goes on the Johnny Carson show, so sometimes they go on there once and they disappeared into the night, It's more fun to say there was a hesitation than the reality of there being one. I mean, there's a very small likelihood that I would have said, "No, Johnny, I'm going up over here and shoot these rivets and eat a bologna sandwich for lunch." So a lot of things you say because they're clever and they make you interesting, you know what I mean? It's like when somebody asked me where I was from, if I would have said Beckley, that doesn't sound too interesting. But Slab Fork has a ring to it. So it's a lot more interesting to say, I got a letter from, Weber Aircraft and Johnny Carson at the same time, and I actually thought about going back there. There's no way I wasn't going to go on the Johnny Carson show.
Can I ask you a question about money?
Yeah.
When was the moment in your career, in your life, when you realized that working a job and earning a wage, that those days were behind you?
Well, when somebody gave me some money, My first song was a hit song, and they gave me a Grammy. That's motivation to, then I should do this again because it,
This is working out well, yes.
Yeah, this is working out,
Mr. Withers, I was looking back at some of the liner notes from your albums. I noticed on Making Music, you just have a really nice thank you where you say, "I want to thank everyone who played an instrument or ran a machine on this album."
Yeah.
And it made me wonder, was there part of you having come from West Virginia, having come from a poor community that felt at all uncomfortable being the one at the forefront?
No, those are things you get from your mother and your father. That's just manners, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You have people with manners all over the world, and you have people without manners everywhere also. So I don't think you can assign that to being from some particular place. Decorum and things like that we learn at home, you know, when we're children.
So that was just because you were raised right.
Yeah, that would be more credit to my parents.
Your wife, Marcia, who you married in 1976, you've said that she's the one who taught you about family. What do you mean when you say that? What did she teach you?
Well, I didn't have one before then, and she was a lot more family-oriented than me. I mean, you know, when I grew up, my brothers and sisters were older. My brother was 24 years older than me. So I never had that, you know, that whole thing. In fact, it was very annoying to me at first, you know, a whole bunch of people. I was used to being by myself and doing what I wanted to do. You know, I don't know if I decided to have kids or not, but they arrived. And so then you learn to, you know, you try to learn how to do that. It's like if somebody gives you a car, then if you can't, you become suddenly interested in driving, you know what I mean?
How much did becoming a father have to do with your re-examining touring, the life of a touring musician, and thinking about, you know, committing to putting out studio albums one after the other?
Well, I knew I couldn't raise kids in Los Angeles if I was in Philadelphia and New York and London and somewhere every night, you know. See, we do what we're licensed to do. By me being a songwriter, most of my money came to my mailbox. I didn't make a lot of money going on tour. So for me, being a songwriter, which I could do in the toilet on an old paper bag or even a piece of toilet paper, you know, and my ego didn't need the applause approval.
Why didn't you need that applause?
I don't know. You know, I don't know. That's just the way I am, you know. You can tell who wants a lot of attention. It's the kid that does somersaults every time company comes over. Then you have another kid sitting in the corner, you know, reading a comic book.
And that was you, the kid reading the comic book.
Yeah. You know, it's like I never got into that entertainer thing anyway, because I sat on a stool with a guitar that I really didn't know how to play. But it kept me from having to dance. You know, what do you do with your hands?
When you think about your body of work, what do you hope you're remembered for?
Well, I know what I'll be remembered for. You know, I mean, there's a reality to. I'm sitting in my wife's office, and her job is to, you know, license and track these songs. So I'll be remembered for the ones that send her downstairs to the bank the most. No, I'm kidding. That's it. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, you're remembered for the things that made the most noise.
So that's what other people will remember you for. When you look back over your own life.
Wait a minute. You know what you just said? You said that's what other people will remember me for.
Yeah.
That's all there is other people. I ain't gonna remember myself.
That's true.
No, I'm teasing.
Well, that is true. That's true. However, I want to ask your personal reflections. At this point in your life, when you think about the choices you've made, what do you feel most proud of?
Well, I mean, I could have done better, but I did all right. That's the way I look at it. Mm-hmm. I could have done better, had I been disciplined, had I not grown up eating everything on a hog but the holler, I would probably be healthier. I wish I knew more about civility younger. All the things that we grow into, I wish I had known those things younger because, I would be healthier and probably more useful and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is, we are born into the situations we were born into. One day you are, and you try to do something with yourself. The best advice anybody ever gave me was very simple. Go make something out of yourself, So we do the best we can with that. But the whole goal of this is to try to make yourself interesting. Because nobody comes here to hide.
That's Bill Withers. He turned 76 years old this 4th of July.
You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on.
He has a way of describing exactly what life's about, but without a lot of drama. That's what we're after at Death, Sex, and Money, going right at the messier details of life. We're brand new, and we want to know what kinds of stories about death, sex, and money you want to hear. Go to our website at deathsexmoney.org. You can also find us on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter at Anna Sale. Death, Sex, and Money is a production of WNYC. The team includes Emily Botine, James Ramsey, Chris Bannon, and Bill O'Neill. Reverend John DeLore and Steve Lewis wrote our theme music. Thanks also to Brendan Baker, Molly Peterson, and Michael Lipton for their help on this episode. Bill Withers' music courtesy of Sony Music Entertainment. If you like this one, how about subscribing on iTunes? In the next episode, you'll hear what happens when you stop pretending that everything's okay and start admitting that money is tight. Really tight.
You feel like a failure. I think you can talk to your friends about You can talk to them about sex, you can talk to them about, depression, you can talk about health things, but you can't talk about money. Money is the last taboo.
I'm Anna Sale, and this is Death, Sex, and Money from WNYC.